All right, Joel. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Thanks for
Good.
having me.
Yeah, no, great. No, so I asked you on today to join me to help educate me on the topic of braking missions. So, the first thing I wanted to kind of chat with you about is just in general with braking missions. So, obviously most people are familiar with the term brake dust because
Yeah.
obviously you drive a car, if you've cleaned your car, obviously you know that the residue sometimes unfortunately builds up on your wheels from
Oh,
from the brake dust. But honestly, it hasn't been probably honestly the last year and a half, 2 years, I kind of became familiar with the term braking missions, which I hadn't heard before. So
that's true.
why now it kind of how did that develop and why now are braking missions that kind of that term getting so much attention?
I think in general, I mean, most people would associate brake dust with what you've just mentioned. There is like dirty rims, and most people associate brake dust with just that, and that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, there is a more serious issue or a more serious element related to brake dust, and that is also the ultrafine particles. So during every braking event, there are like a lot of particles emitted. You can see the bigger particles on the rim of your vehicles. But there are also the ultrafine particles. Here we're talking about size ranges of only a few nanometers, and these are related to like health issues. So these small nanoparticles, they can like deeply penetrate into your lungs. They can even enter the bloodstream. And if you want to improve air quality in especially in like densely populated city centers, there is a need to look into that topic. And in order to further improve air quality, especially in city centers, legislative authorities from all over the world, they've now started to look into that topic in order to improve that situation. And of course, with Horiba, we also support these kind of activities from the legislative groups because in the end of the day, we all have a common goal, and that is making the world cleaner, making the world more efficient. That's basically it.
Yeah. So that makes sense to me too. So because the brake dust is more of the heavier, I guess, the particles that kind of settle, obviously the residue, and then the emissions are more of obviously the smaller aspects where you can breathe in and more of the environmental aspects. Okay, got it. So from an environmental perspective, obviously they've done a good job over the last several years, or worked, the industry as a whole have worked really hard to eliminate or reduce a lot of the exhaust emissions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, but now, so do you think, so in your opinion, is it because, they've done such a good job of eliminating that particular health issue or the concern that now maybe the brake emissions is kind of the next, I guess, thing that's been highlighted? Is that kind of the reason for it? Or,
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I mean, if we look over the last couple of decades, exhaust emissions, they have been significantly reduced to like stricter emission limits. We have better engine technology, advanced after treatment system and stuff like that. But now the legislative authorities, they're also looking into other sources.
mm,
And that is like non-exhaust emission. That's a new big thing. It's not only related to brake dust. We're also talking about tire wear, road suspension. So yeah, definitely we will see a legislation or a regulation coming up in that area pretty
okay.
soon.
Yeah. So talking about, so while you're on that topic, I guess regulations, I know you stay on top of that issue. So what's the latest? I mean, can you kind of give me an update on what's going on? I guess whether it's over in Europe or the rest of the globe.
Actually, it's related to mainly three areas. So in the US, there is CARB, the California Air Resource Board, which got a huge project on brake dust. We also see activities from Japan. There is one big group. They already set up something like a draft document on brake dust. They want to introduce a new brake dust standard by the end of March of next year, so pretty soon.
Okay.
But most areas, including China, Korea, India, they're basically following or monitoring what's going on in Europe. And in Europe, we see a lot of activities from the PMP group. That's like the Particle Measurement Program.
Mhm.
It's like one of the working parties under the umbrella of the UNECE. They got the mandate to provide a roadmap on so-called non-exhaust emissions back in 2014, and since that they have been working on that topic. So
Yeah.
it started all with like setting up new task forces. They set up two task forces. The first one dealing with like the development of a new brake test cycle, and the second task force they are handling all the issues related to measurement procedures, sampling, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because like the PMP, I tried to do a little research obviously beforehand, to kind of get a
mhm.
get a handle on it. So the PMP. So what's the objective then? Is it to set up standards on what is actually being measured, like the actual materials, uh, or is it more of how much is being emitted into the air? Or is it all that? I mean, is the goal to kind of come up with like standards to help guide the
Yeah.
industry?
I think the main objective from PMP is definitely setting up a so-called commonly accepted methodology for measuring brake dust.
Okay.
So we all know where this is leading to. This will be a regulation someday, but the scope of the PMP is really setting up a commonly accepted method for measuring brake dust. And
Okay.
I think it also makes sense to set up these two task forces, because in the very beginning, you just need something like a test cycle in order to have like the same kind of speed profile, acceleration, deceleration profiles. They set up this new brake test cycle called WLTC Novel, or WLTP brake. It's derived from this WLTP database, so it simulates something like real world driving from the 5 main regions, which are the US, Europe, India, Korea, and Japan. So that was the first step. But once you've agreed on a test cycle, you also need to make sure that you are able to measure consistently, that you do robust measurements, reproducible measurements in all the different laboratories. And that's basically the scope of the task force too, setting up a procedure on how to measure.
Okay. So is this going to be where every country, continent comes up with their own, and then for example, like the US has their own measurement, Europe has their own, maybe Asia has their own, or is there going to be some sort of method? I mean, do you foresee where they're going to try to come together where they have like a global standard? Or is that almost impossible?
I think they will target a global standard. Yeah, the brake test cycle, as I mentioned before, this is derived from the WLTP database, so a global database where driving and stuff like that is simulated. And in the PMP group, that's also not only a European group, but we also see members, attendees from other regions, members from CARB are present in PMP meetings. All the Japanese groups, they are present. We also see attendees from China, India, Korea. So I would expect that we will see something like a golden standard from Europe, and then probably all the different regions, they will do minor adjustments in order to take into account the specific requirements from the different regions.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So let me throw this at you then. Let me ask you this. So with the advancements in technology and I guess all sorts of different solutions to eliminate the emissions at the source, such as like, for example, like the EV market, electric vehicles, less demanding on the brake system, therefore, I guess technically maybe reducing or limiting or using less brake dust is going to emit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or there's also solutions where they're actually filtering, or I guess almost like vacuuming out, for lack of a better term, emissions at the actual source on the vehicle. And also too, maybe just from a formulation perspective, maybe developing formulations that maybe have less hazardous materials in them, or maybe it somehow emits less materials in general. So those things happening, if that continues to evolve, is there even going to be a need for the legislation at all? Or do you think that's still going to kind of come down the course and these things are just going to kind of help with making it easier to adhere to those standards?
Yeah, personally, I think we will see the introduction of all the solutions you just mentioned, but we will also see the introduction of a legislation. Let me give just one example. Like 20 years ago, the legislative authorities in Europe, they wanted to, let's say, force the OEMs to install something like a diesel particulate filter. The solutions were also there. They were present in the different companies, but still we have a legislation now. So there is no need for the industry to really implement all these solutions, because they are also associated with like different costs, additional maintenance and stuff like that. So I think we need both. We need the solutions, but we also need a legislation. Both needs to come together.
Okay, got it. So then what's the next step? I mean, do you know like what's going on now with I guess with PNP and some of these other things? I mean, are we just kind of, are they still just kind of in the phase of trying to organize things and get more data to understand maybe how severe or how much emissions are really being emitted, or do they have all that and really it's just more about trying to come together to, um, I guess, put some sort of actual position statement in place to say, hey, this is where things are going?
No, I think at the moment it's still related to a lot of technical discussions. So if we have a look on the roadmap from PMP, once again speaking about the two different task forces, I think the work from Task Force One when it comes to the brake test cycle, this work is almost finished. So the test cycle was introduced in July of last year. But when it comes to measurement equipment, sampling conditions, how to operate your brake dyno and stuff like that, there are still a lot of open issues, and this will continue for the next couple of months.
Okay.
So initially it was planned to set up a brake dust legislation as part of the post-Euro 6 standard, which would probably come into force somewhere between 2023, 2025. At the moment, we see the European Commission shifting back a little bit. So in the latest presentation, they are only talking about 2000XX, which can basically mean anything.
Yeah.
But I think the important information, it is still targeted to define all the technical requirements by the beginning of 2021. And all the, let's say, subsequent steps, they're more related to like political things. So I think it's important that we continue working in 2020 on all the open issues, on measurement technology, on stuff like that, so that we can be ready in 2021. I think then we'll have something like a round robin. At the moment, there are like more than 10 partners within the PMP group. So we have to make sure that the procedure defined in the PMP group is robust. It gives the same results in all the different laboratories. And once this is done, I think then we can continue in setting up the drafting, setting up a little monitoring phase and stuff like that. So
Okay.
the real introduction date, I think that's just political.
Got it. Okay. No, that makes sense. So moving on. So let's talk about Horiba. So obviously Horiba, global company, obviously well established, been around, obviously a major player in the testing, measurement, equipment, and services segment, many industries, but obviously I'm most familiar with you all from the automotive side with the brake dynos and the measurement testing, performance of brakes, things like that. But I was at Eurobrake earlier this year, and obviously you guys had a big presence there, and of course you showcased or highlighted some of your brake emissions testing capabilities. So how long has Horiba had this capability, or is this kind of I guess a work in progress, or you guys right now are offering this to customers?
I think talking about brake dust, we started the first measurements back in 2010. It was very, let's say, simplistic, just taking one of Horiba's measurement equipment, putting it next to a brake dyno, and just see what's going on. I think the real in-depth investigations, they began in 2014. So we started with several in-house projects, also a project with external universities. We continued with like bigger projects with OEMs, had material studies with Swiss institutes. But I think 2014, that was like the starting point. And since that, of course, we have been present in all the big conferences. You mentioned Eurobrake. We've also been attending SAE Brake Colloquium, giving presentations, talks, presenting our results and stuff like that. Of course, we are also monitoring what's going on in terms of the legislative direction and stuff like that. And I think it's also important to mention last year we set up a brake test center here in Flesheim in the Frankfurt area in Germany. And since last year, we're also able to measure brake dust there. So a lot of customers are coming in, providing additional feedback, providing questions. I think that's always a good measure to see where you are actually with your concept.
Yeah.
But at the moment, the final concept, this is already offered on a commercial basis.
Okay.
So true.
Is that more from a service perspective? Like your center in Germany, is that more for in-house providing the testing services, or can the customer purchase the actual equipment for their own in-house testing
Yeah,
measurement?
both. I
Okay.
think Florsheim got like three main purposes. Of course, it's a profit center, so we're offering contract testing, including brake dust. Second topic is also like it's an in-house research center, so we're doing a lot of internal measurements to like optimize equipment, to investigate the influence of different operation parameters on the actual emissions. But it's also an information exchange center with our customers. I mentioned before, they bring in a lot of valuable input, but they also bring in questions, additional remarks. I think in the end of the day, it should be our target to provide the best possible solutions fitting to the specific demands of our customers. And therefore, this brake test center in Florsheim is like the best solution.
Okay.
Our
So,
solution, of course, in Florsheim, everything is like established. But you can also buy the entire package. So the entire Horiba concept is based on like three pillars. Usually we're talking about brake dyno modifications. You can do that on a new brake dyno. You can also upgrade your existing one. And the second pillar is the measurement equipment. And then also an important topic is the software or the automation part. You collect a lot of data. You need to make sure to merge data, do time alignment. You need to do the reporting and stuff like that. So this is all handled automatically by the software.
okay. So, just so I can get a better understanding too. So, is the actual testing equipment or the process, is it a standard? I know you offer many different types of dynos, I believe. So, is it a dyno that you make modifications to? You kind of bolt on, I guess per se, you bolt on this technology or this product solution, or is it? Did you guys develop something from scratch? It's completely different than a dyno.
No, I think no customer would accept to purchase like one individual brake dyno, which can only be used for brake test
Okay.
testing. So our brake test solution is agnostic to the brake dyno, so you can basically fit it into all the existing dynos as well.
Okay.
Modifications are not that complicated, so I think you want to ensure to have a robust measurement. You want to ensure to have a reproducible measurement. Just want to give you two examples. In the final brake emission testing, you want to measure the emissions of the brake assembly. You don't want to measure what's going on in your laboratory. So one of the modifications would be the installation of a HEPA filter in the cooling air duct in order to remove all the particles. Particle background concentration should be as low as possible, so that all the particles which are emitted at the brake, that only these particles are counted.
Okay.
Maybe another example, the brake assembly, that's usually installed in something like a bigger brake chamber, but you need to make sure to install something like a smaller brake enclosure, housing only the brake assembly, because otherwise you would lose a lot of particles in your brake chamber, and this would of course also falsify your results.
Okay. So you're able to measure or capture the amount of emissions, but also you're able to identify exactly what it is and how much of each particulate or whatever, I guess, material it is.
Yeah, the legislative authorities, they are requiring the measurement of the particle number concentration. So that is done by one measurement instrument. And it's also required to measure the particle mass. So we have to do PM10, PM2.5. In addition, we also provide instruments to measure the particle size distribution. I think this is especially relevant for like R&D purposes when you want to optimize brake friction materials, different compositions and stuff like that. And from our scientific department, we also have an instrument to analyze the brake dust sample when it comes to like the different elements involved in the filter testing.
Okay. Okay. So now is this only offered in Germany, or if you have customers all over the world, do you have is this offered at the different locations that you all have all over the world?
Yeah, we offer that globally. I think
Okay.
we have to understand our customers are working on a global basis, so we also have to provide solutions on a global basis. That's right.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. So if someone in obviously over here in the U.S., some of the maybe potential customers, they can contact the good folks here over in Troy, Michigan.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Got it. Okay,
I'm
perfect.
also only a very small part of a very big team, so we got global brake dust experts all over the world, especially like in the main areas, that is the US and Europe, Korea, China, and Japan. There the companies are talking about brake dust, and we got like local people handling the business there, taking all the customer questions and stuff like that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Well, Joel, I appreciate your time today. You've helped me out. You've educated me a little bit better and give me an update on what's going on from that particular area. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a great
Yeah.
opportunity to speak about that topic. I think we'll be there for quite a long time.
No, that's good. Yeah, we'll have to do this again. All right. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Take care.